A billionaire stops when he sees a little girl crying on the street. But when he finds out who her real father is, everything changes. Where are you watching me from right now? Let me know in the comments. The sky hung low with dark clouds as the city lights flickered on, indifferent to the silent suffering happening below. 7-year-old Ellie sat curled on the edge of a cracked sidewalk, her tiny frame shaking from more than just the cold air. She wore a once bright pink frock now dulled with dirt, a blue jeans jacket too small for her growing arms, and scuffed sneakers that whispered stories of too many long walks alone. Her curly blonde hair clung to tear-streaked cheeks, and her blue eyes stared at the ground, wide but hollow, as though she was trying to disappear into it. The weight of her stepdad's cruel words still echoed in her ears. "You're nothing to me! Get out!" Followed by the bang of the door slamming behind her. Her mother had stood frozen, lips trembling but silent, as Ellie was pushed out into the world like a forgotten mistake. She didn't take anything with her, not her doll, not her books, not even the jacket she usually wore to sleep. Just herself and the gnawing ache of not being wanted. Cars passed by, people walked fast with heads down, no one stopping to ask what a child was doing sitting alone with bruises on her knees and sorrow on her face. That is, until a black Rolls-Royce pulled up quietly across the street. From it stepped a man in a tailored sharp blue suit, his black hair neatly trimmed, his blue eyes scanning the sidewalk with sharp curiosity. Damien Blake had just finished a charity gala he barely remembered attending, bored of hollow smiles and champagne glasses clinking. But something about this child, the way she sat with so much stillness in a world moving too fast, made him stop. He didn't send his assistant or a security guard. He crossed the street himself, kneeling slowly so he wouldn't scare her. "Hey, are you okay?" His voice was gentle, nothing like the ones that barked orders in boardrooms. Ellie flinched at first, looking up with wide, glassy eyes, startled that someone had finally seen her. She didn't answer. She only blinked, uncertain whether he was real or a dream she'd have to wake from. Damien noticed the tear streaks, the redness in her eyes, the trembling of her tiny fingers gripping the edge of her jacket like it was armor. "You don't have to be scared," he said softly. "I just want to know if you're hurt, or if someone's waiting for you." Ellie's lip quivered, and she shook her head no. Her voice, barely a whisper, came out raw. "Nobody's waiting." He swallowed hard, something tightening in his chest. "What's your name?" She hesitated, then answered. "Ellie." Her voice cracked like dry leaves. "Ellie, that's a beautiful name," he said, offering a kind smile. "I'm Damien." She looked at him, confused. "Are you a police?" He chuckled softly. "No, not even close." Her eyes darted behind him to the shining car and his spotless shoes. "You look rich." "Some people say that," he replied with a gentle shrug. "But that doesn't matter right now. What matters is you. Why are you out here all alone, Ellie?" She paused, trying to hold it in, but it was too much. Her little hands clenched into fists. "My stepdad, he said I don't belong. He told me to go away, so I did." Her breath hitched. "And your mom?" he asked carefully. She looked away. "She didn't stop him. She just cried, but didn't say anything, like she forgot I was her kid too." Damien felt something shift deep inside him. He had heard board members lie to his face, seen fortune change hands like playing cards, but nothing ever made him feel the way her voice did right now, so pure, so abandoned. "Where do you live?" he asked. She pointed behind her vaguely. "Back there. But I don't think I'm supposed to go back." Damien looked down, heart aching. "And where were you going now?" She bit her lip, shrugging helplessly. "I was going to sleep near the store. They have heaters outside sometimes." A beat of silence passed between them. Damien gently reached into his pocket and pulled out his silk pocket square, handing it to her. She hesitated, then took it, wiping her face with slow, shaky motions. He stayed kneeling, unsure what to say next. He didn't know how to fix broken childhoods, but he also knew he couldn't just walk away. Not from her. Not tonight. "Ellie, would it be okay if I sat here with you a little while?" She nodded, surprised. "You don't have to," she murmured. "But I want to," he said sincerely. "You look like you could use a friend." Her eyes widened again. "I've never had a real one. They always go away." "I won't go away," he promised, more to himself than her. After a long moment, she looked up at him with trembling lips and asked, "Why do you care?" Damien didn't have a perfect answer. All he could say was, because someone should. The streetlights flickered above them like a silent blessing. A stranger and a child sat side by side on the curb, as though fate had written their meeting years ago. Then came the words that shattered the night completely. Ellie whispered through her tears, "I don't have a home anymore. I don't have a home anymore." The words slipped from Ellie's lips like a final surrender, soft and shattered. Damien Blake's heart clenched in a way it hadn't in years, not during any failed deal or lawsuit or betrayal, but because a child had just told him she belonged nowhere. His voice caught in his throat, and for a moment, the billionaire who owned skyscrapers, fleets, and empires had no idea what to say. He exhaled slowly, his gaze locked on her small, trembling form. "Ellie," he said gently, "would it be okay if you came with me? Just somewhere warm. We can talk. No pressure, no tricks. Just safety." She looked up at him with glassy eyes, fear and longing clashing in her expression. "You won't leave me outside?" she asked quietly, like she'd been promised too much before. "Never," Damien said firmly. "I'd never do that to you." With a small nod, Ellie slowly placed her tiny hand in his. Her fingers were ice cold, and as Damien held them, he realized he wasn't doing this out of pity. He needed to do this. Not just for her, but for the version of himself that had once been a frightened boy, hiding under freeway bridges with nothing but his mother's arms for comfort. Damien led her carefully into the back seat of his luxury car, instructing the driver softly, "Home, but take the long route." He wanted time to think. As they drove, Ellie clutched the pocket square to her chest like it was made of gold. "Is this really okay?" she whispered. "I don't want to be a problem." Damien turned to her, his voice low but sure. "Ellie, you are not a problem. You are a person, a brave little girl. And right now, I think you need someone to remind you that you matter." She blinked rapidly, as if trying to hold back more tears. Nobody ever said that before. Silence filled the car like a blanket. Damien studied her small face, the faint bruises that told stories no child should ever carry, and the way her eyes darted anxiously at every stoplight. "How long has it been like this?" he asked softly. "Since my mum met him," she murmured. "He doesn't like kids. He said I cost too much, that I was in the way." Damien's jaw tightened, rage surging in his chest. He had crushed billion-dollar mergers, but now he wanted nothing more than to walk back and confront the man who made this child feel worthless. But Ellie didn't need vengeance. She needed healing. "Well," he said, breathing deeply, "tonight you're not in the way. You're exactly where you're supposed to be." She stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. "Why are you being nice?" He hesitated. "Because someone once helped me when I had nothing, and I never forgot how much it meant." Ellie leaned back into the seat, exhaustion settling in her bones. Her head tilted and gently landed against his arm. Damien froze, then slowly let her rest. The little girl had trusted him without truly knowing him. That kind of innocence. It was sacred. He looked out the window as city lights blurred by, lost in thoughts of his own childhood. The cold nights, the soup kitchens, his mother's broken lullabies. She had died before seeing the empire he built. But if she were here now, she'd smile at this moment. "We're here, sir," the driver said quietly. Damien carried Ellie inside his mansion, her head still resting on his shoulder. She stirred only when the warmth of the grand foyer hit her cheeks. "This is huge," she whispered. "It's just walls," Damien replied, "but maybe we can turn it into something better." He walked her to a guest room, soft pink walls, a cushioned reading nook, shelves of teddy bears that had never been played with. A room designed for no one, finally belonging to someone. "You can sleep here tonight," he said, kneeling to her level. "If you need anything, just press that little button on the wall. I'll be just down the hall." She nodded slowly, but hesitated. "Is it really okay? I won't be sent away tomorrow." Damien looked into her eyes. "No, Ellie, not tomorrow, not ever, unless you want to leave. But here, you're safe." Her shoulders finally relaxed. "You talk different than other grown-ups," she said. "You don't make me feel small." Damien's voice cracked slightly. "Maybe because I remember what it's like to feel small." She hugged him suddenly, tight, desperate, like she didn't want to let go. "Thank you, Damien," she whispered. I don't feel so invisible anymore." He wrapped his arms around her carefully, gently. "You were never invisible. The world just forgot how to see you." He tucked her in gently, leaving a soft light on just in case. But as he walked down the hallway that night, Damien didn't go to sleep. He stood outside her door for hours, one thought repeating in his heart. What if this was fate? What if I didn't find her? What if she found me? The thought pulsed through Damien's mind as he stood silently in the hallway, the night wrapped around him like a secret. For all the years he had built walls of marble and glass, none had ever made him feel the way this little girl's presence just had. The mansion, with its crystal chandeliers and polished silence, had always echoed too loud with emptiness. Now, behind one door, a soft, steady breath gave it something it had never truly held: life. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the tall windows like warmth that hadn't touched these halls in years. Damien had barely slept. He sat at the kitchen island, a fresh cup of coffee cooling untouched, as he scrolled through emails he couldn't bring himself to answer. Then he heard it, a shuffle, a tiny footstep, the hesitant creak of a door. Ellie peeked in, hair tousled, eyes still sleepy, but brighter than before. She wore one of the soft, oversized shirts the housekeeper had placed in her room. Damien stood quickly. "Hey," he said softly, unsure if he should act casual or protective. "Did you sleep okay?" Ellie nodded, hugging herself. "It was so quiet, I thought I was dreaming." He smiled gently. "Good dreams, I hope." She looked at him curiously. "Better than usual?" He pulled out a chair. "You hungry?" She hesitated. "Can I really eat?" "You can eat anything," he chuckled. "Everything here is yours to choose from." She sat slowly, staring at the spread: pancakes, fruits, fresh juice, things she'd only seen in movies. "This is for me?" Damien sat across from her. "Yes, just you and me this morning." She reached slowly for a strawberry, biting into it like it was a treasure. "You know," she said between chews, "it still feels like maybe I'll wake up back on the porch." Damien's smile faded into something more serious. "You won't. I promise." She looked down. "I didn't mean to be bad. I just was always in the way." He leaned in. "Ellie, let me tell you something. Some people are so broken they forget how to love. That doesn't mean you were hard to love." Her lips quivered, but she didn't cry this time. She just nodded. "Okay." After breakfast, he showed her around the house, the grand staircase, the library full of untouched books, the sunroom that glowed like magic. She gasped at the indoor pool. "This is bigger than our whole apartment," she giggled. Damien chuckled. "I haven't used it in years." "Why?" she asked, spinning in her oversized slippers. He paused. "Didn't have anyone to splash water at." She grinned. "You do now." He looked at her, surprised by how easily that one smile began healing something inside him. As days passed, Ellie began to bloom. She read books curled under velvet throws, drew pictures of the cat she named Sir Meows, and helped the cook with cookies, even though she mostly just ate the dough. One morning, Damien caught her singing quietly in the hallway. He froze. The sound was like sunlight on water, pure and warm. She stopped when she noticed him. "Sorry," she whispered. "It's beautiful," he said. "Did you learn that from school?" "My mum used to hum it," before she stopped humming. He felt that in his chest. He knelt down. "You can sing any time here. You can be you any time here." She looked at him with wide eyes. "Even if I mess up?" "Especially then," he smiled. Days turned into weeks. One night, Ellie came into his office carrying a drawing. "I made this for you." It showed two stick figures, one tall in a blue suit, one little in a pink dress. Above them, a sun smiled. "Is that us?" Damien asked. "Yup," she beamed. "That's our tomorrow." His throat tightened. He reached for a frame on the shelf, removed a generic art piece, and placed her drawing inside. "Now it's official." Ellie giggled and jumped into his arms for a hug, uninvited but welcomed. As he held her, something cracked open inside him, something raw and real. That night, she fell asleep on the couch next to him watching cartoons. He didn't move her. He just let her be close. She was beginning to trust him, and he was beginning to believe he could be more than a businessman. He could be something good. But a part of him still wondered, was he enough? Could he really give her the family she deserved? The mansion no longer felt cold. It echoed with laughter, footsteps, and lullabies hummed through cracked doors. Ellie had made herself at home. Yet in quiet corners, Damien's past tugged at him. He had promised himself he'd never be vulnerable again. But this little girl had stormed into his fortress of solitude and brought colour into his grey world. One evening, as she coloured with her crayons and hummed the same melody again, Damien stood watching from the doorway. Something about her innocence, her resilience, stirred a memory, one he hadn't visited in years. And then he whispered to himself, almost afraid to say it aloud, "What if I'm the one who was lost until she found me?" The thought lingered in Damien's mind as he stood in the doorway, watching Ellie laugh with crayons in hand, her curls bouncing with every giggle. There was something about her that unravelled all his carefully constructed walls, something familiar yet unplaceable. That night, as she slept, tucked into her princess-themed bed, he sat in his study, sipping whiskey he no longer craved for comfort, and pulled out his laptop. A quiet need had begun to stir inside him, to know more, to understand where Ellie had come from, not just emotionally, but factually. He couldn't just rely on her fragile words and fading memories. She deserved justice. She deserved truth. He called his head of private security, Grant, a grizzled man who owed Damien his life. "Find everything you can on Ellie's family," Damien instructed, voice low and sharp. "Her mother, stepfather, anything." Quietly. Within hours, reports flooded in, legal records, addresses, police complaints buried under paperwork. Then Damien's eyes froze on one name, Matthew Kane. A name he hadn't heard in a decade, but would never forget. Kane was a former business partner, a ruthless opportunist, who had nearly destroyed Damien's first startup before disappearing with stolen money and a forged resignation letter. But what stunned Damien to his core was not just that name, it was the connection. Matthew Kane was Ellie's biological father. Damien pushed back from the desk, his pulse racing, chest pounding. Was this fate? Or some cruel joke from the universe? He walked down the hallway, peeking into Ellie's room. She was fast asleep, clutching the pocket square he'd given her on that first night. How could someone like Kane have created something so pure, so gentle? Damien sat on the edge of her bed, unsure of what to feel. Was she a shadow of betrayal, A remnant of someone who nearly ruined him? Or was she the one beautiful thing left behind after a dark man vanished? The next morning, Ellie walked into the kitchen, humming, hair messy, face glowing. "Good morning, Damien," she chirped. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes, she noticed. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked quickly, shrinking in. No, never," Damien said immediately, pulling her into a hug. But something had shifted inside him. As the day passed, he remained quiet, lost in thought. That evening, Ellie handed him a card she made. "It's for you," she said shyly. "You help people like a superhero. I wanted to say thank you." He opened it, and inside was a stick drawing of him flying, Ellie in his arms. A tear slid down his cheek before he could stop it. "You okay?" she asked, climbing onto the couch beside him. "Yeah," he whispered. Ellie, can I ask you something?" She nodded. "Do you remember your real dad?" Her face fell like a storm cloud sweeping over a sunny sky. "Not really. Mum said he left before I could say Dada. She cried a lot after." Damien clenched his fist. "And do you know his name?" She thought hard. "I think it was Matt? Or Matthew? I don't like that name. I like Damien better." He smiled sadly. "I'm glad." That night, Damien stood at the edge of his property, looking out at the city lights. He was torn. Did the past matter more than the present? Could he raise this girl knowing her father once tried to destroy everything he had built? And yet, Ellie wasn't her father. She was sweet, kind, brave, everything Cain was not. She wasn't a reminder of betrayal. She was a chance for redemption. He had nearly talked himself out of it until he walked past her bedroom again. Her voice called softly, "Damien." He stepped inside. "I'm here." "Are you mad at me?" she asked, barely audible. "You've been quiet. I thought maybe you changed your mind." His heart shattered. He walked to her bed, kneeling. "Ellie, listen to me. I didn't change my mind. I just found out something about your past, and I needed to think." She looked scared. "Am I going away now?" He shook his head, voice breaking. "Number. You're staying. As long as you want. You hear me? I don't care who left you before. I won't." She began to cry, crawling into his arms. "I thought if I was good, people would stay, but they don't." Damien held her tightly. "I'm not people. I'm me, and I'm here. You don't need to be good to be loved, Ellie. You just need to be you." Her tears soaked into his shirt. "Can I call this place home?" she whispered. "Yes," he said, pulling her even closer. "This is your home." "Then can I call you Dad?" The words struck his heart like thunder, ripping open every shield he'd built. He couldn't speak at first. His eyes stung. Finally, through a cracked voice, he answered, "I would be honored." She smiled for the first time all day, one of those smiles that made the stars outside seem dull. That night, Damien made a call to his legal team. "I want custody, full rights, whatever it takes. She's not just a guest. She's my daughter now." The world had taken so much from her. It had nearly made her believe she was disposable. But Damien had made a choice, not just to rescue her, but to become her family. Not out of obligation, but out of love. He stood by her doorway once more, just like he had weeks ago. Only this time, the silence wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. And he whispered one last time, "I don't care who her father was. She's mine now." The words still lingered in the quiet of the mansion like a sacred promise, one Damien had never made to anyone before. As he turned away from Ellie's door that night, his heart felt heavy, but full, burdened with love he hadn't known he was capable of giving. For years he had collected wealth, power, and prestige, but none of those things had filled the quiet ache in his chest, the one Ellie's tiny voice had now soothed. The next morning, he stood at the kitchen stove, wearing an apron for the first time in years, flipping pancakes while humming Ellie's lullaby under his breath. She tiptoed in, hair messy, eyes sleepy, and stopped at the sight. "You cook?" she giggled. He looked over his shoulder with a grin. "I'm a billionaire, not useless." She laughed, a sound that filled the mansion like spring sunlight. "You're the coolest dad ever." His heart melted. "Say it again." "You're the coolest dad ever," she repeated, slower this time. The word dad echoed in his mind like a melody he never expected to hear in his lifetime. That day, they went shopping, not for designer clothes or toys, but for a backpack, a lunchbox, and little pink shoes. "I'm enrolling you in the best private school in the city," Damien said as she clung to his hand. "Will the other kids know I'm different?" she asked softly. "You're not different," he said. "You're extraordinary. Let them see that." The night before her first day, she stood in his doorway, nervous. "What if I mess up?" He knelt, tucking a curl behind her ear. "Messing up means you're trying. Just be you. I'll be right here when you come home." She nodded bravely and went to bed. In the morning, Damien watched her walk into the classroom from the car window, her head held high. He didn't know it yet, but every teacher she'd meet would be touched by her kindness. Every child who sat beside her would be drawn to her resilience. Ellie was made of light that even her darkest nights hadn't dimmed. Weeks passed. The mansion that once echoed with silence now buzzed with after-school chatter, baking experiments, dance routines in the hallway, and bedtime stories that Damien read more eagerly than Ellie listened to. One day, she brought him a certificate from school. "Look, I won the Kindness Award." He picked her up, twirling her gently. "Of course you did. You're the kindest soul I've ever known." Then came a surprise. Ellie's school had invited parents to a storytelling day. Damien, despite his boardroom confidence, was terrified. "What would I even say?" he muttered. Ellie held his hand. "Just tell them our story." So he did. He stood before the class of wide-eyed children and curious teachers and spoke the truth. "I met Ellie when she had no place to go, but she gave me something I didn't even know I needed, a reason to open my heart." He paused. "People think being a billionaire is about numbers, but wealth is about what and who you hold close. Ellie made me rich in ways money never could." Tears shimmered in the room. Ellie ran up and hugged him before he'd even stepped off the platform. "You did great, Dad," she whispered. Outside, a news reporter who had been tipped off about the speech approached him. "Mr. Blake, why this girl? Why take her in?" Damien looked into the camera without hesitation. "Because the world failed her. And I refuse to be part of that failure. We don't need to share blood to be family. We only need to share love." The clip went viral. Letters poured in. Strangers offered help, inspired by the bond between a forgotten girl and the man who refused to forget her. One day, Ellie came home with a small box. "I made you something," she said shyly. Inside was a bracelet made of string and beads. The letters spelled DAD. "It's not fancy, but—" He cut her off, tears already forming. "It's the greatest thing I've ever been given." From that day, he never took it off, not during meetings, not even at charity galas. It became his proudest symbol, more than any award or title. On Ellie's 8th birthday, the entire mansion transformed. There were flowers, laughter, and for the first time, real family photos on every wall. But one moment stood above all, when Damien bent to one knee, holding a small gift box. "Inside is something small," he said, "but it means everything." She opened it to find a gold locket with their picture inside. On the back, it read, "Chosen by love." "You chose me," she whispered. "No," he smiled, eyes full. "You saved me. I just finally saw what love really is." As the party swirled around them, Damien looked out at the life he never expected, the daughter he never planned for, the joy he never dared to hope for. And in that moment he realized, some families are born, but the most beautiful ones are chosen.